My name is Rachel Carter, and I never thought I would experience something that would change my life forever. But here I am, writing this because I feel like I have to share what happened to me. I died. I crossed over. And what I saw on the other side was something I never expected. I met Jesus, and he showed me a truth that completely shocked me, a truth about black people that had been hidden for centuries. It wasn't just a vision, it was a revelation. I'm still trying to process it. But one thing is clear. The world needs to hear this. It was an ordinary day, at least. That's what I thought. I woke up early, just like always. The sun hadn't risen yet, but I was already moving, trying to shake off the grogginess of sleep. My apartment in Atlanta, Georgia, was quiet, just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing by outside. I made my usual cup of coffee, black with a splash of vanilla creamer, and stood by the kitchen window, watching the streetlights flicker in the early morning mist. There was something in the air that felt off. It wasn't anything I could put into words, just a strange, heavy feeling, like the world itself was trying to tell me something. But I brushed it off. Life had been stressful lately. Bills, work, family issues, just the usual things weighing on my mind. I had a big meeting at work, and my boss had been on edge about some deadlines. So, I got ready, grabbed my keys, and headed out the door like I did every weekday morning. I had no idea that in just a few hours, my entire life would change. The highway was packed, as usual, with cars bumper to bumper, horns blaring, and people in a hurry to get nowhere fast. I turned on the radio, letting the sound of a morning talk show fill the car as I sipped the last of my coffee. The sky was overcast, a thick layer of gray clouds stretching over the city. The air felt unusually heavy, almost as if a storm was brewing. But the weather forecast had said nothing about rain. I didn't think much of it. My mind drifted as I drove, thinking about my to-do list. What I'd make for dinner. Whether I'd have time to hit the gym after work. Then, out of nowhere, a sharp pain shot through my chest. It wasn't like anything I'd ever felt before. It was intense, gripping, and terrifying, like a fist squeezing my heart. My breath caught in my throat. I tried to inhale, but no air came in. My vision blurred. The road in front of me twisted. The cars and buildings stretching and warping like a dream. Everything around me slowed down, the cars, the traffic lights, even the people walking on the sidewalk. It was like the world had suddenly shifted into slow motion. Somewhere in the distance, I heard the screech of tires. And then, impact. The sound of metal crumpling, glass shattering, and my body jerking forward as the world went black. The next thing I knew, I was lying on the pavement, staring up at the sky. I could hear voices, people shouting, sirens in the distance. Someone was crying, but none of it felt real. It was like I was underwater, listening to the world from far away. The pain that had gripped my chest moments ago was fading, replaced by a strange calmness. The fear, the stress, the worries I had been carrying, they were all melting away. I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't even sure if I was alive. Then, I noticed something strange. I could still see my car, a black SUV, smashed against the concrete barrier. The windshield was shattered, and the hood was crushed inward. There were people gathered around it, shouting for help. And there, on the ground, just a few feet away from the wreckage, was my body. For a moment, my mind couldn't process it. How could I be here, looking down at myself? Then it hit me. I was dying. A rush of detachment washed over me. I didn't feel any connection to the body on the pavement anymore. It was just a shell. Something I had outgrown in an instant. I tried to speak, to call out to the people around me, to let them know I was still here, but no sound came out. My voice was gone. Then, I felt something pulling me. Not physically, but spiritually, as if an invisible force was lifting me, guiding me upward. I had no control over it, but I wasn't resisting either. I floated higher, watching as the scene below grew smaller and smaller. The street, the ambulance lights, the growing crowd of onlookers, it all started to fade. And then, I saw it. A light appeared in the distance. Small at first, but growing brighter and brighter. It wasn't like any light I had ever seen before. It wasn't harsh or blinding. It was warm, inviting, alive, like it was calling me home. I moved toward it effortlessly, as if I was being drawn in. The further I went, the more the world I had known faded away. The city, the people, the sounds, everything disappeared. All that was left was the light and a sense of overwhelming love that wrapped around me like a soft embrace. Then, just as I was about to step fully into the light, I heard a voice. It wasn't loud, but it was powerful, resonating deep within my soul. "It's not your time yet." I froze. The voice was familiar, but I couldn't place it. And then, everything shifted. Suddenly, I was standing somewhere else. A place that wasn't Earth, but wasn't completely foreign either. It felt like a waiting area between two worlds. And that's when I saw him. To be continued. A presence filled the space around me, powerful, yet gentle. I wasn't afraid, but I felt small, like a single drop of water in an endless ocean. I turned, my eyes adjusting to the strange but familiar place I had arrived in. It wasn't Earth, but it wasn't quite heaven either. It felt like a waiting place. Something in between. The air was thick, not in an oppressive way, but with warmth, peace, and something unexplainable, like the air itself was alive. Before me, a tunnel stretched into the distance, glowing with a golden light that pulsed gently, almost like it was breathing. I felt drawn to it, as if something, or someone, was calling me forward. I took a step, and immediately, a sensation washed over me. Every burden, every worry, every ounce of pain and stress I had carried in my earthly life vanished. It was like I had been carrying a weight I never knew was there. And now it was gone. For the first time in my life, I felt completely free. As I moved forward, I noticed something incredible. I wasn't alone. On either side of the tunnel, shadowy figures stood watching me. Their forms shimmered like waves of pure energy. I couldn't see their faces clearly, but I knew they were souls, people who had crossed over before me. Some felt familiar, like I had known them in another life, while others were complete strangers. But they weren't silent. They spoke, not with words, but with their spirits. I could hear them in my soul. They were welcoming me, comforting me, letting me know I was safe. Their presence filled me with an overwhelming sense of love, love deeper than anything I had ever felt on earth. I wanted to stay there forever. But someone, was waiting for me at the end of the tunnel. I kept walking, drawn forward by a force I couldn't explain. And then, I saw him. At the end of the tunnel stood a figure unlike any I had ever seen. Jesus. His presence was so powerful, so overwhelming, that for a moment, I couldn't move, I couldn't speak, I could only feel. And what I felt was pure love. Not the kind of love that humans understand, not conditional. Not based on worth or deeds. Not something that could be lost. This was a love that simply existed. That had always been and always would be. It wrapped around me, filled me, and reached the deepest parts of my soul. Jesus stood there, radiating light, warmth, and peace. His eyes met mine, and in that instant, I saw everything. Every moment of my life flashed before me, not just the big events, but the small, forgotten ones too. Every decision I had made, every word I had spoken, every act of kindness, and every mistake. But there was no judgment in his eyes, only understanding. I wanted to speak, to ask him why I was here, what was happening, but before I could form the words, he raised his hand, and suddenly, everything changed. I was no longer standing in the tunnel. Instead, I was somewhere else, a vast, open space that I couldn't fully describe. It was neither earth nor heaven, but it felt like it had always existed. Before me, images began to form, like moving paintings made of pure energy. The first thing I saw was Africa. But not the Africa I had seen in history books. This was something different, something ancient, powerful, and glowing with divine light. I saw cities, strong, advanced civilizations full of wisdom and spiritual power. I saw people, not broken, not oppressed, but chosen. Then Jesus spoke, and his voice shook my very soul. The world has lied about them. I felt my heart pound. Who? I wanted to ask. Lied about who? But the vision continued. I saw chains. I saw ships. I saw people, taken from their homeland, stripped of their names, their culture, their history. I saw suffering, generations of pain. But then, I saw something even more shocking. I saw forces working behind the scenes. Not human forces. Something darker. Something evil. They weren't just trying to control people. They were trying to erase the truth. Jesus turned to me, his expression filled with both sorrow and love. The oppression was not just physical. He said, it was spiritual, because if they knew who they truly were, the world would change. I felt something inside me break. This wasn't just history. This was a spiritual battle. And most of the world had no idea. The vision changed again. I saw modern times. People waking up, realizing who they were, reclaiming their power. The same people who had been told they were nothing were beginning to remember the truth. Jesus smiled. The time of revelation has begun. He said, "They will rise again." Tears filled my eyes. This wasn't just about race. This was about identity, purpose, and destiny. The world had tried to erase them. But God had not forgotten. And now, the truth was coming to light. The vision faded, and I was standing before Jesus once more. He looked at me with a seriousness that made my heart race. "You must tell them," he said. "The world is changing, and they need to know the truth." I opened my mouth to speak, to ask how, to ask why, but suddenly, everything started pulling away. The light, the tunnel, even Jesus himself. "No," I cried out. "I don't want to go back." But his voice was firm. "You must." And then, a jolt, like being hit with a shock of electricity. I gasped for air. My eyes flew open. Back to life. I was back. The beeping of hospital machines filled my ears. Nurses and doctors were rushing to my side. I could feel my heart pounding, my lungs struggling to take in air. I was alive, but I was not the same. Because now, I knew the truth, and my life would never be the same again. I lay in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I had just died. I had seen Jesus. I had been shown a truth so powerful, so overwhelming, that I still couldn't fully grasp it. The world was built on a lie designed to keep people in darkness. And now, I knew the truth. The question was, what was I supposed to do with it? The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beeping of the heart monitor. The fluorescent lights overhead felt too bright, almost unnatural after the warmth of the place I had just been. I could hear my sister, Maya, talking to a doctor outside my room. I recognized the worry in her voice. She had always been the one to take care of me, even when I didn't want her to. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the noise. But the vision came rushing back. I had seen Africa, not the broken, impoverished image the world had painted, but a place of strength, wisdom, and divine power. I had seen black people, not just as victims of history, but as a chosen people, with a spiritual connection that had been stolen, hidden, and manipulated. And I had seen evil forces working behind the scenes to keep this truth buried. Jesus' words echoed in my soul. If they knew who they truly were, the world would change. I knew I had to share this. But how? Who would believe me? That night, after Maya left, I grabbed my phone from the bedside table. I hesitated before opening my messages. Who could I tell? I decided to text my best friend, Erica. She had always been open-minded about spirituality. So if anyone would listen, it would be her. Me. "Hey, I need to talk to you about something. It's important," she replied almost instantly. "Erica. Girl, I've been so worried. You scared me. What happened?" I hesitated before typing my response. How do you tell someone you just met Jesus and that he revealed a hidden truth about black people? Finally, I just typed, "Me. I saw Jesus. He showed me something about us, about black people. Something big. We've been lied to. Erica." She didn't respond for a minute. Then, "Erica. Wait, what?" I took a deep breath and started typing everything about dying, the tunnel, Jesus, and the vision of Africa and its stolen history. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then 3 little dots appeared, like she was typing, but they disappeared. Then finally, "Erica. I think you were hallucinating. You went through something traumatic. Maybe your brain was just processing stuff?" My heart sank. I had hoped she would believe me, but she thought I was just imagining things. Me. I wasn't hallucinating. Erica. It was real. Erica. I don't know. Rach, it just sounds crazy. I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. I had seen the truth with my own eyes, felt it in my soul. But here I was, struggling to make even my best friend believe me. How was I supposed to tell the world? As the days passed, I tried to tell more people. I told Maya. She smiled sympathetically and said, "Maybe it was just a dream?" I tried sharing my story online, but my posts kept disappearing. Every time I wrote about the vision, my phone froze. When I recorded a video talking about what Jesus had shown me, the file was corrupted before I could upload it. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. But then, things got worse. One night, I was lying in bed, still weak from the accident, when I felt it, a presence. The air in my room became heavy, like it was pressing down on me. My body went completely still, I couldn't move. Then, I saw it, a shadow. It was standing in the corner of my room, darker than the night itself. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I wanted to run, but my body wouldn't move. Then, I heard it, a whisper. Stop speaking. A chill ran down my spine. I knew, this was spiritual warfare. Something didn't want me to share what I had seen. I forced my lips to move, even though it felt like an invisible force was holding me down. And with every ounce of strength I had left, I whispered, "In the name of Jesus, leave." The second I spoke his name, the shadow vanished. The air in the room instantly became lighter. I gasped for breath, my body trembling. This was bigger than I had realized. I finally understood. The truth Jesus showed me wasn't just hidden, it was being actively suppressed. It wasn't just about racism or history, it was about spiritual control. If black people knew their true spiritual identity, it would change everything. And the forces that had spent centuries erasing that truth weren't going to give up without a fight. I sat up, still shaking, but now I was more determined than ever. I didn't know how, but I knew one thing. I had to keep speaking. Even if the world thought I was crazy. Even if I lost friends. Even if darkness tried to stop me. Because now, I knew the truth, and I couldn't go back. I knew I had touched something powerful. Something real. The shadow that had appeared in my room wasn't just a trick of the light. It was a warning. Someone, or something, wanted me to stay silent. But I couldn't. I had seen the truth. I had met Jesus, and he had shown me what the world had tried to erase. Black people weren't just victims of history. They were chosen. They carried divine wisdom, a connection to God that had been systematically hidden, stripped away, and rewritten. And now, as more people were waking up, the forces that had kept this truth buried were fighting back. I decided to speak louder. If one way didn't work, I would find another. I started recording videos, sharing what I had seen, about the vision, the truth, and the battle happening in the spiritual world. The first few times, my phone shut off randomly. Then, my laptop crashed. When I finally managed to upload a video, it mysteriously disappeared within minutes. I tried again, and again. Each time, something went wrong. Then came the messages. At first, they were just angry comments, people calling me crazy, saying I was pushing an agenda. But then, the messages got darker. One night, I got a text from an unknown number. "You need to stop." I stared at my phone, my heart pounding. I typed back, "Who is this?" No response. Minutes later, another message came through. "This is bigger than you understand." My hands went cold. I wanted to believe it was just some internet troll. But something told me this was different. This wasn't just people trying to silence me. This was something else. That night, I couldn't sleep. The air in my apartment felt off, like something was watching me. I checked my locks twice, closed my curtains, left a lamp on. I crawled into bed, pulling the covers around me, trying to push away the growing sense of unease. Then, at 2:13 a.m., I woke up to a noise. At first, I thought it was just the wind. But then I heard it again, a low, dragging sound coming from my living room. I sat up, my breath caught in my throat. I listened. The sound came again, slow, deliberate, like something was moving. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. My pulse racing. I stepped out of my bedroom. My apartment was silent, too silent. And then, the shadow was back. It stood by my window, completely still. I froze. It was taller than before, darker than the night itself. The edges of its form seemed to shift, almost like it wasn't fully in this world. It didn't move, but I felt it, anger, hate, a deep, unnatural presence that sent chills down my spine. Then, it spoke, not out loud, but in my mind. "You will be silent." A wave of fear crashed over me so strong that my knees nearly buckled. I wanted to run, I wanted to scream, but then, I remembered Jesus. I forced my lips to move. And with every ounce of strength I had, I whispered, "In the name of Jesus Christ, leave." The second I said his name, the shadow flinched. For a brief moment, I saw something, rage, fear, desperation. I said it again, louder. In the name of Jesus. Leave. A screech filled my apartment. Sharp and unnatural, like metal tearing against metal. And then, it was gone. The air lightened. The pressure lifted. I gasped, gripping the edge of my couch. My entire body shaking. This wasn't just about me sharing a story anymore. This was war. The next morning, I woke up with a new understanding. The battle wasn't just about history. It wasn't just about racism or oppression. It was spiritual. There were forces working to keep people asleep, to keep them from realizing who they truly were. And now that the truth was coming to light, they were doing everything they could to stop it. But I wasn't the only one. The more I spoke, the more I found others. People who had experienced the same visions. People who had always felt something was off but never had the words to describe it. People who had been searching for the truth and now finally saw it. We were waking up, and the resistance was getting stronger because of it. That night, as I prayed, I heard him again. His voice wasn't loud, but it filled every part of me. Do not be afraid. Tears burned in my eyes. I whispered back, I don't know what to do. Keep speaking. I closed my eyes, gripping my hands together. But they're trying to stop me. Then, he said something that changed everything. They wouldn't try to stop you if it wasn't the truth. I opened my eyes, the weight of those words settling in my soul. This was real. This was bigger than me. And if they were fighting this hard to silence the truth, then I had to fight harder to speak it. From that moment on, I stopped holding back. I kept speaking. I kept posting. I kept telling people what Jesus had shown me. No matter how many times my messages got deleted. No matter how many strange calls I got in the middle of the night. Because I knew the truth now. And I wasn't going to let fear stop me from sharing it. The world is waking up. And nothing can stop it. I had no doubt now, this was war. Not a war fought with guns and armies. But a war for the mind. For the soul. For the truth itself. Ever since my near-death experience, I had been fighting to share what Jesus had shown me. I had spoken about the hidden truth of Black people. The spiritual deception that had kept them in the dark. And the forces that were desperately trying to silence this awakening. But the more I spoke, the more resistance I faced. Strange things kept happening. Videos disappeared. My phone shut off randomly. My messages got deleted. And then there were the shadows. The dark presence that had tried to stop me from speaking Jesus' name. But the worst thing happened the night I received another vision. This time, it wasn't just about the past. It was about the future. I had just finished praying when it happened. I wasn't asleep, but I wasn't fully awake either. It was like my soul had been pulled into another realm. At first, I saw nothing but darkness. Thick, heavy, endless. Then, suddenly, a massive screen appeared before me. Not a television, not a movie screen, something bigger. It stretched across the sky like a window into time itself. And I saw the future. The first thing I saw was people waking up. Not just spiritually, but mentally, emotionally, historically. I saw Black men and women reclaiming their identity, not the one history had forced on them, but the truth that had been buried. I saw them breaking free from mental chains, rejecting lies that had been told for generations. And when they did, the world itself began to shift. It was like the earth was reacting to the awakening. Nations trembled, governments panicked, religious institutions that had profited from deception started losing control. And then, I saw the enemy's response. The vision changed. Now, I saw powerful people meeting in secret. Politicians, media executives, religious leaders, all working together. They weren't discussing laws or policies. They were discussing how to stop the awakening. I saw them planning distractions, spreading misinformation, turning people against one another. And worst of all, I saw fear. They would use fear to keep people in spiritual chains. I saw news headlines filled with panic. I saw social media flooded with division. I saw people being silenced, canceled, erased, just for speaking the truth. And then, I saw something even worse. The vision shifted again. Now, I saw natural disasters, earthquakes, floods, fires, sweeping across the world. I saw cities crumbling. I saw people running, screaming, searching for safety. And in the middle of it all, I heard his voice. The world must be shaken before it can be restored. Tears streamed down my face. I understood now. The lies that had built the foundation of this world were so deep, so strong, that only a great shaking could tear them down. The old world, the one built on oppression, deception, and control, had to fall. And then, I saw what came after. After the destruction, after the chaos, I saw something beautiful. I saw people coming together. Not because they were forced to, but because they had been freed. I saw new leaders rising, not from governments, but from among the people. I saw a return to spiritual truth, direct connection with God. No intermediaries, no false doctrines. I saw black people walking in their divine power, leading in ways the world had never seen before. And I saw others joining them, people of all nations, all backgrounds, united in truth, not division. I gasped. This was the prophecy that Jesus had shown me. Then, the vision changed one last time. And what I saw made my blood run cold. I saw the enemy preparing for war. Not just physical war, a war for souls. I saw a great deception coming, something so convincing, so powerful, that millions would fall for it. I saw technology being used to manipulate people, governments enforcing control like never before. I saw churches betraying their own followers, twisting scripture to serve an agenda. And then, I saw something even more terrifying, people choosing to stay blind. Not because they didn't know the truth, but because the truth required too much courage. I turned to Jesus, who was standing beside me, watching it all unfold. Why is this happening? I asked, my voice trembling. His eyes were filled with both sorrow and strength. Because many will refuse to wake up, he said, but those who do, they will be my warriors. I gasped as I was pulled back into my body. I shot up in bed, my heart racing, my hands trembling. It was still night. My lamp was still on. The world around me hadn't changed. But I had. I knew now what was coming. And I knew that I had a role to play. The next morning, I sat at my desk, staring at my laptop screen. I had a choice to make. I could stay quiet. I could pretend I hadn't seen what I had seen. Or, I could do what Jesus told me to do. Keep speaking. I took a deep breath and started typing. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everyone. And whether they were ready or not, the awakening had begun. I stared at my laptop screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard. The vision of the future was still fresh in my mind, the awakening. The deception, the war for souls. I knew now more than ever that I had to speak. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Something dark. I had seen what happened to people who told the truth. They were mocked, attacked, erased. Would I be next? I closed my eyes and whispered, Jesus, give me strength. And then, I started typing. I poured out everything, the accident, the near-death experience, meeting Jesus, the revelation about black people, and the vision of the future. I didn't hold back. I typed about the spiritual war, the hidden history, the way the world had been built on lies to keep people blind to their own power. I wrote about the great shaking that was coming, how the world would have to fall apart before the truth could be restored. And finally, I wrote about the choice. Would people wake up? Or would they cling to the lies, afraid of what the truth would cost them? When I finished, I hit post. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, my phone started blowing up. At first, it was just a few comments. Then hundreds. Then thousands. Some people were moved, saying they had always felt like something was missing. That my words resonated with them in a way they couldn't explain. But others? They were furious. This is dangerous rhetoric. You're spreading conspiracy theories. Stop making everything about race. You're crazy. I expected skepticism. I expected doubt. But I didn't expect what happened next. My account was suspended, without warning. Without explanation. I tried logging back in. But my username didn't even exist anymore. My videos disappeared. My emails wouldn't send. And then, the phone calls started. The first one came at midnight. I had just finished praying when my phone lit up with a call from an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. Hello? Silence. Then, a voice, low, distorted. Stop talking. My stomach clenched. Who is this? Click. They hung up. 5 minutes later, another call. I didn't answer. A voicemail popped up. I pressed play. Heavy breathing. Then, laughter. Chills ran down my spine. I deleted the message, locked my doors, and sat on my couch. Heart pounding. This wasn't just coincidence. This wasn't just people online getting mad. Something was trying to stop me. That night, I barely slept. I woke up at 2:37 a.m. My body frozen. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. I felt a heavy weight pressing down on my chest. The air around me was thick, suffocating. Then, I saw it. The shadow. It was back, standing in the corner of my room, watching. My mind screamed, "Pray." But I couldn't even open my mouth. The shadow stepped closer. Closer. A voice, low and mocking, whispered inside my head, "You think you can win?" I forced my lips to move. "Jesus." The shadow twitched. I tried again, stronger. "In the name of Jesus. Leave." A loud, high-pitched shriek filled the room. The shadow lunged, then vanished. The weight on my chest lifted. I sat up, gasping, tears streaming down my face. This wasn't just a message. This was a battle. And I was right in the middle of it. The next morning, I went straight to prayer. I needed answers. I needed guidance. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered, "Jesus, what do I do?" His voice came instantly. "Do not be afraid." Tears burned in my eyes. I whispered, "They're trying to stop me. They will try, but they will fail." I exhaled shakily. "People don't believe me." His voice was gentle, but firm. "They don't have to. The ones who need to hear it will hear." I opened my eyes, determination settling in my chest. They could delete my accounts. They could try to scare me. But they couldn't stop the truth. I grabbed my laptop and started again. Because the war had already begun. And I wasn't backing down. If you're reading this now, know this. This isn't just my story. This is yours. Something in your spirit has probably felt it for a long time. That something is wrong with this world. That there are truths you were never told. That you were meant for more. I'm here to tell you, you were right. The world is waking up. The enemy is fighting harder than ever to keep people asleep. But you have a choice. Stay in the dark, or step into the truth. Jesus is calling. The question is, will you listen? I had no illusions anymore. This wasn't just about me sharing a story. This was about a war for truth, a war for souls. And the forces that had controlled the world for centuries weren't going to give up without a fight. After my last post, things escalated fast. People I had never met started reaching out. Some told me they had experienced similar dreams, visions, and attacks. Others just wanted to say that something about my words stirred something deep inside them. I don't know why, but I feel like I've always known this. I had a dream just like this. But I was too scared to talk about it. Everything you're saying, it makes sense in a way I can't explain. I wasn't alone. People were waking up, but so was the enemy. The day after my post went viral, I received an email from a fact-checking organization. Your content is spreading misinformation. If you continue, your platform may be permanently removed. Misinformation? I wasn't talking about politics. I wasn't spreading hate. I was just telling people what I had seen. But that was the problem. They weren't afraid of lies. They were afraid of the truth. My account started glitching again. My phone refused to stay on for more than 5 minutes at a time. And then, the calls started again, late at night, always from an unknown number. And every time I answered, there was silence. Or worse, breathing. Then, one night, I received a message that made my blood run cold. You need to stop. You don't know what you're dealing with. I sat in the dark, phone in my shaking hands, my mind racing. Was this just intimidation? Or was something much darker trying to silence me? I didn't know. But I did know one thing. I wasn't stopping. That night, as I fell asleep, I knew something was coming. And sure enough, I found myself standing in the spirit realm once again. The air around me was thick, heavy with something I couldn't explain. I turned, and there was Jesus. His eyes held sadness, but also power. He spoke, and his voice shook my soul. Time is running out. My heart pounded. What do you mean? Suddenly, the sky above us ripped open like a curtain. And I saw it. The world, our world, falling apart. I saw cities crumbling, entire streets swallowed by the earth. I saw the oceans raging, massive waves crashing into coastlines. I saw fires, floods, storms, chaos. People were running, screaming, searching for safety, but there was nowhere to hide. Then, I saw the deception. The news anchors, the politicians, the religious leaders, they weren't telling people the truth. They were saying it was all just coincidence. That it was climate change, politics, a financial crisis, anything but what it really was. A spiritual shaking, the beginning of the end of the lie. I turned to Jesus, my hands shaking. Why are you showing me this? I whispered. His gaze met mine. Because you must warn them. A lump formed in my throat. But they don't believe me. He placed his hand on my shoulder. Some will. Then the vision changed again. I saw pockets of light across the world. Groups of people, standing firm in faith, in truth, in power. I saw black men and women walking in divine authority, remembering who they were, breaking every mental and spiritual chain that had been placed on them. I saw people of all nations standing beside them, waking up, choosing truth over lies. And then, I saw something terrifying. Behind those who chose the truth, I saw an army of angels, standing in battle formation, and in front of them, I saw the enemy. Demons, twisting, writhing, screaming in fury. I saw them possessing leaders, infiltrating systems, spreading fear, and feeding people lies. I saw them whispering to people, telling them to stay silent, to stay asleep. And I saw some people choosing to listen, choosing comfort over truth. And then, Jesus spoke again. Tell them they must choose. The sky above us flashed. And suddenly, I was back in my bed. I shot up, my heart hammering. I grabbed my phone and opened my notes app, typing out everything I had seen. I didn't know how much longer I had before they tried to silence me again. But I had to get the message out. If you're reading this, it means that somehow, the message is still spreading. It means that you still have a choice. You can ignore this. You can dismiss it, call it crazy, pretend that everything in this world makes sense. Or, you can wake up. Because the shaking has already begun. And soon, the world won't be able to ignore it anymore. Jesus showed me what's coming. Now, I've told you. The rest is up to you. I knew things would never be the same again. Jesus had shown me what was coming. The world was about to be shaken like never before. The deception would grow stronger. The battle more intense. But in the midst of it all, those who were awake, those who knew the truth, would rise. I had seen the war in the spirit. Now, I was living it. After my last message, things got worse. I tried to post again, but my accounts were permanently deleted. I created a new profile. Within hours, it was shut down. Emails? Blocked. Videos? Deleted before they even finished uploading. The resistance wasn't just spiritual anymore. It was physical. Someone, or something, was trying to erase me. One night, I was working on my laptop when my phone lit up. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Silence. Then, a low, distorted voice. Enough. My heart pounded. Who are you? I demanded. The voice laughed. You don't understand what you're playing with. Click. The line went dead. I stood up, pacing my apartment. My hands were shaking, my mind racing. This wasn't just about online censorship anymore. This was a warning, a threat. Something, or someone, wanted me gone. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to every little sound. Then, at exactly 2:56 a.m., my room went ice cold. A pressure settled over me, thick, suffocating. I knew what it was before I even saw it. The shadow. It was back, but this time, it wasn't standing in the corner. It was hovering right over me. I tried to move, I couldn't. I tried to scream, I couldn't. The air around me felt heavy, like invisible hands were holding me down. Then, a voice, not audible, but in my mind, hissing with pure hatred. Stop talking. My chest tightened. It felt like something was trying to crush me. I forced my lips to move, whispering with every ounce of strength I had. Jesus. The shadow flinched. Jesus. I said it again, louder. It snarled, like an animal caught in a trap. I clenched my fists. In the name of Jesus. Leave. A piercing shriek filled the room. The shadow lurched backward, twisting, writhing, then vanished. The air instantly lightened. I gasped, pulling in deep, ragged breaths. I sat up, gripping my blanket, shaking uncontrollably. This was real. The enemy was afraid. Not of me, of Jesus. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I had just survived a battlefield. Because I had. But I knew one thing now. They wouldn't be fighting this hard to silence me if the message wasn't important. I wasn't the only one being attacked. Other people I had never met, started reaching out. Telling me the same thing. They were having visions. They were being visited by shadows. They were being told to stop speaking. The war wasn't coming. It was already here. That night, as I prayed, I felt His presence so strongly. It brought me to my knees. Tears streamed down my face as I whispered, "What do you want me to do, Jesus?" His voice came instantly, filling the room, filling my very soul. "Warn them." I gripped my chest. "But they won't listen." "Some will." I took a shaky breath. "What happens to those who don't?" The air around me felt heavy. And then, in an instant, I was somewhere else. I stood in the middle of a massive city. I didn't recognize it, but it felt like America. The streets were packed with people, running, screaming. Something was coming. I looked up, and my breath caught in my throat. The sky was splitting open. A massive storm, black, churning, violent, descended over the city. I saw fire raining from the sky. Buildings crumbling. People falling to their knees, crying out. And then, I saw them. The ones who had chosen the lie. They weren't running. They were laughing, mocking. Even as the destruction came, they refused to believe it was real. Then, I saw the others, the ones who had listened. They stood firm, unshaken, a light surrounding them. They weren't afraid. They weren't running. They were protected. And I knew, this was the choice. Would people wake up? Or would they drown in the deception? I gasped, snapping back into my body. I was on the floor, still trembling from the vision. I grabbed my phone, my fingers shaking as I typed out the last words Jesus had spoken to me. Tell them they must choose. The shaking had already begun. The deception was spreading faster than ever. The world was running out of time. And now, the choice was in your hands. The world was running out of time. I knew it. I could feel it in the air. In the way everything felt heavier. Like we were standing on the edge of something massive. The visions, the warnings, the attacks, it was all leading to this. And now, the question was simple. Would people wake up? Or would they let the darkness consume them? After my last post, everything escalated. My emails wouldn't send. My messages kept getting deleted before they were even opened. Then, my phone stopped working altogether. At first, I thought it was just a glitch. But when I tried to turn it back on, a message flashed across the screen. Access denied. I stared at it, my pulse pounding. What was happening? Then, my doorbell rang. I froze. It was 2:36 a.m. No one visits at that time. I moved slowly, my breath caught in my chest. I peeked through the peephole, no one was there. But my porch light flickered. And suddenly, I felt it, that same heavy, demonic presence from before. It was outside my house. Watching, waiting. I stepped back, grabbed my Bible, and whispered, Jesus, protect me. The air shifted. The heaviness lifted, just a little. But I knew one thing for sure. They were trying to stop me. And that meant I had to move faster. The next morning, I got in my car and drove to see Maya. She had been skeptical about everything. But she was still my sister. If anyone needed to know the truth, it was her. When I arrived at her apartment, she opened the door and frowned. You look like you haven't slept in days. I stepped inside. I haven't. She crossed her arms. Are you still on this whole end times thing? I took a deep breath. Maya, listen to me. I know it sounds crazy. I know you don't want to believe it. But you need to hear me out. She sighed and gestured toward the couch. All right, say what you need to say. And so, I told her. Everything. The accident. The visions. The spiritual battle. The great shaking that was coming. She didn't interrupt. She didn't even blink. She just listened. When I finished, silence stretched between us. Then, she whispered, I've been having dreams. I sat up. What kind of dreams? She hesitated, then shook her head. I didn't think they meant anything. But now, I don't know. My heart pounded. She was starting to see. And if she was waking up, maybe others would, too. That night, I had one last vision. This one was different. It wasn't about disasters. It wasn't about the awakening. It was about the enemy's final move. I saw people lined up, staring at giant screens, watching, listening, believing every word. I couldn't hear what was being said, but I knew it wasn't the truth. It was a lie, one so convincing that even some of the people who had woken up started questioning what they knew. Then, I saw a figure standing in the center of a massive crowd. A leader, someone the world trusted, someone who would promise peace, safety, unity. But behind him, I saw shadows. They clung to him, whispering in his ear, feeding him words. And I knew, this was it. The moment Jesus had warned me about. The vision faded. I shot up in bed, gasping for air. The world was about to enter its final deception. And people would have to choose. Not later. Now. I grabbed my journal and started writing as fast as I could. Because if there was one thing I knew for sure, this was the moment. No more waiting. No more excuses. This message found you for a reason. I don't know who you are. I don't know where you are. But I know this. You feel it. You see it. The world is changing. And deep down, you know something isn't right. The deception is here. The enemy is trying to silence the truth. And now, you have a choice. Will you wake up? Or will you fall for the lie? Because time is almost up. Choose wisely. I had done everything I could. I had spoken. I had warned. I had fought against the darkness that had tried to silence me. And now, I could feel it. Something was shifting. The war wasn't coming. It was already here. After my last message, I knew the enemy was running out of ways to stop me. The censorship wasn't working anymore. People were finding ways to spread the truth. The intimidation wasn't working either. I had faced the shadows, the threats, the fear, and I was still standing. So they tried something new. They tried to make me doubt. It started with small things. My dreams became confusing, twisted. I would wake up unsure of what was real and what wasn't. I started forgetting details from my visions, questioning whether I had imagined everything. One night, I sat in my car, staring at my phone, my heart pounding. I had just received a message from a random number. You're leading people into deception. I gripped my steering wheel. Could it be true? Was I being used without realizing it? Was I really hearing from Jesus? Or was I just caught up in my own mind? I closed my eyes, whispering, God, if I'm wrong, please show me. The second I spoke those words, the entire car shook. It wasn't an earthquake. It wasn't the wind. It was something else. Then, a whisper, not from outside, but from inside my soul. You already know the truth. A wave of peace settled over me. I took a deep breath. The enemy was lying, trying to make me second-guess everything. Because they were desperate. That night, I had one final vision. I saw the world split in two. Not physically, but spiritually. On one side, people stood in the light. Their eyes were open, their spirits awake. They weren't afraid. On the other side, people were blindfolded. They stood in darkness, unaware that chains were wrapped around their wrists and ankles. And in between them, a line. A single, invisible line. I watched as some of the people in the darkness stepped forward, crossing into the light. The moment they did, their chains shattered. They looked confused at first, then relieved. Then, I saw others, people who had already been in the light, step back into the darkness. The second they crossed over, the chains latched onto them again. I gasped. Why? I asked Jesus, who was standing beside me. His voice was steady. Because they were afraid of the cost. Tears filled my eyes. What happens to them? Jesus looked at me, sadness in his gaze. They chose. Then, the vision ended. I shot up in bed, my heart racing. This was it. There was no more time. People had to choose. The world was split. And soon, there would be no more crossing over. So here it is. Maybe you've been feeling it. Maybe you've been sensing that something is off. Maybe you've always known there was more to this life than what you were told. This is your confirmation. This is your choice. Stay in the dark, or step into the light. Because soon, the line will close. And after that, there's no going back. The weight of what I had seen pressed down on me. I had spent so much time warning, fighting, and trying to get people to see, but now, I realized something painful. Not everyone wanted the truth. Some people would never wake up. And that was the hardest thing to accept. I spent the next few days trying one last time. I reached out to friends, family, and even strangers online. I told them everything about the visions, the deception, the coming divide. Some listened, some even cried, realizing that they had felt it too but were too afraid to admit it. But others? They laughed. You really think the world is ending? This sounds like some cult stuff. You need to stop scaring people. I wasn't scaring people. I was preparing them, but they couldn't see it. And I realized something terrifying. It wasn't that they didn't believe me. It was that they didn't want to. Because believing meant changing. And changing meant sacrificing the comfort of the lie. That night, I had one final dream. I stood in the same place as before, between the two groups. The ones in the light. The ones in the darkness. But this time, the line was closing. It was getting thinner, smaller, disappearing. And I knew, soon, there would be no more crossing over. I watched as people ran toward the line, trying to get to the light. But some hesitated, some stopped to look back, some waited too long, and when they finally tried to step forward, the line was gone. A scream ripped through the air as the ones left in darkness realized what had happened. They banged on an invisible barrier, trying to get through, but it was too late. The choice had been made. I turned to Jesus, who was standing beside me, his face filled with both love and sorrow. "Is there nothing left to do?" I whispered. He looked at me and shook his head. "The time of choosing is almost over." And then, I woke up. I sat in bed, my heart pounding. The message was clear. We were in the final moments. The window was closing. People had to decide now. There was no more time to wait. I grabbed my phone and started typing. Because if there was one last thing I could do, it was this. Give them one last chance. This is it. This is the moment. The world is choosing sides. And soon, the line will close for good. Maybe you've ignored the signs. Maybe you've brushed off the warnings. Maybe you've told yourself, "I'll figure it out later." But later is almost gone. This is the last chance to step into the truth. Because once the door closes, there's no going back. I could feel it now. The final moments of choice were here. It wasn't just something I saw in a vision anymore. It was happening in real time, all around me. People were waking up. Others were doubling down on the lie. And the divide between them? Growing wider every day. I tried one more time. I called my best friend, Erica. She had listened before but never fully accepted what I was saying. "Hey," I said, voice shaky. "I need to see you." She sighed on the other end. "Rach, please tell me this isn't about." "It is." I cut in. "And it's serious. Please." A long pause. Then, "Fine. Meet me at the coffee shop." I grabbed my keys and headed out. When I got there, Erica was already waiting, stirring her iced coffee like she wasn't sure why she had agreed to come. She looked up as I sat down. "So, what's so urgent?" I took a deep breath. "The time is almost up." Her expression changed, something between concern and frustration. "Rachel," she sighed, "I love you, but this sounds crazy. You've been different since the accident." I clenched my fists, because I saw the truth. "Erica, I saw what's coming, and I don't want you to be caught off guard." She shook her head, looking down. "I just don't know if I can believe all this." I felt desperate now. "Have you noticed how weird things feel lately? How fast the world is changing? How divided everyone is? Doesn't it feel like something is coming?" She hesitated. For the first time, I saw doubt in her eyes. "I mean, yeah," she admitted, "but maybe it's just life. You know, the world's always been crazy." "No," I said firmly. "This is different, and deep down, you know it." She chewed her lip. "So what are you saying? That I need to, what, join a movement? Hide in a bunker?" "No," I whispered. "You need to make a choice." She exhaled, rubbing her temples. "I don't know, Rach. Then, her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. "I had to go. Work stuff." I grabbed her hand before she could stand. "Erica, please, just think about it, please." She squeezed my hand back, gave me a sad smile, and walked away. And I knew she had already chosen. After that, I stopped trying to convince people. Because I saw it clearly now. People weren't being forced to choose. They were choosing willingly. And now, I could see the signs everywhere. Every day, the world felt darker. More people were falling into fear, anger, deception. The ones who were waking up, they were being mocked, silenced, even targeted. It wasn't a conspiracy. It was a war. And I knew the door was closing. That night, I prayed harder than ever. I knelt by my bed, pressing my forehead against my hands. "Jesus, what now? What do I do?" The answer came instantly. "Watch." And then, I was gone. In the vision, I stood on a great mountain, looking over the world, and what I saw made my stomach drop. The people who had chosen the truth were standing in one place, safe, steady, unshaken. The ones who had chosen the lie were on the other side, angry, desperate, afraid. And between them, a massive door. It was slowly closing. A few people from the dark side ran toward the door at the last second, trying to make it through. Some did, most didn't. Then, boom, the door slammed shut. A sound like thunder ripped through the air. The people left outside began to scream, bang on the invisible barrier, begging to be let in. But it was too late. The choice had been made. I turned to Jesus, my heart pounding. Tears streaked my face. Why? I whispered. He looked at me with so much love, but also so much sorrow. Because they waited too long. Then, everything faded. Back to reality. I gasped, sitting up in bed, drenched in sweat. My heart was racing. The door was closing. And soon, there would be no more time. This is it. This is the last warning. You don't have forever to decide. The world is changing. The battle is here. And soon, the door will shut for good. When that happens, where will you be? Everything I have shared, the visions, the warnings, the attacks, and the choices, has led to this moment. This isn't just a story. It's a call to action. The world is changing. The divide between truth and deception, light and darkness, faith and fear is growing wider by the day. You've seen it. You've felt it. And now, you have a choice. Jesus showed me what's coming, not to scare me, but to prepare me. And now, I've shared it with you. Not everyone will listen. Not everyone will wake up. But those who do, they will be ready. The deception is strong, but the truth is stronger. The darkness is rising, but light always wins. And no matter what happens next, one thing is certain. The door is closing. The time for waiting is over. The time for doubting is gone. You have to decide, right now, which side you're on. Because soon, the line will close. And once it does, there's no going back. I have done my part. Now, it's up to you. Final takeaway. Stand in truth. Do not be afraid. Fear is the weapon of deception. Seek the truth. Do not rely on what the world tells you. Ask God directly. Choose wisely. The choice is yours, but the time to choose is now. Stay strong. The battle is real, but so is the victory. Jesus is calling. Are you listening?